From Dating to I Do is a Christian woman's guide to praying, planning, and preparing for her future husband. If you're a single woman, this book will help you stop feeling stuck and start living a more fulfilling life today. You'll date with integrity and self-respect in today's anything goes society. You'll position yourself to meet Mr. Right without looking desperate or compromising who you are. If you're ready to live the life that God has for you, and if you're ready to prepare for the next season of life, which is marriage, then this book is exactly what you've been looking for. It is available right now at Amazon.com. From Dated to I Do is a Christian woman's guide to praying, planning, and preparing for her future husband. If you're a single woman, this book will help you stop feeling stuck and start living a more fulfilling life today. You'll date with integrity and self-respect in today's anything goes society. You'll position yourself to meet Mr. Right without looking desperate or compromising who you are. If you're ready to live the life that God has for you, and if you're ready to prepare for the next season of life, which is marriage, then this book is exactly what you've been looking for. It is available right now at Amazon.com. You definitely have your non-negotiables that you should not, negotiate on. Just like, we talked about having that relationship with Christ, and of course, I'm gonna choose number three. But if it's as this person is late all the time, that may be, and I'm an on-time person. Maybe I can't work with that. Is it something that could annoy me? Yes, but could it something I live with for the rest of my life? So I guess it just all depends on, again, your non-negotiables, your green flags, which is, you're okay with it. Then those yellow flags you may be annoyed with, but it doesn't drive you away like those red flags.
Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Heart Talk with Coach Abby, the show where we talk about singleness, marriage, and everything in between. I'm really excited about this topic we are talking about today. We are talking about how important is discussing mental health in your relationship. Now, to be honest, you guys, I have never talked about mental health in any of the relationships that I was interested in, or the guys I was interested in talking to. That just wasn't never, it never crossed my mind. But you see that we also have a guest here on the show. Her name is Natasha Miller. She is a licensed clinical professional counselor and the owner of Beyond a Couch Therapy Service. So I always tell y'all this, but we do not just bring any Joe Schmoes on the show. We have professionals that know what they're talking about, especially about such an important topic as well. Now, if this is your first time ever tuning in, make sure that you give us a virtual shout out. Let us know that you are in the virtual world. If you're watching from any other page other than Worthy of Love, Counseling, and Coaching, or Everything Authors, I need you to come on over to one of those two pages so we can actually see your questions and comments. Now, the great thing about this show is you don't even have to type everything. You can actually call in your questions, keyword questions. Call in your questions. The telephone number is listed in that description box, as long as well as the pass, like it's not a password. You don't have to enter in any type of passcode, but that meeting ID is listed there. Now, when you call in, give us some time to get to your question because we are coming to you. Just be patient with us as well. So now another great thing about the show is all of Coach Abby's contact information is listed in the description box. So you don't have to Google anything. Um, this show, we're actually discussing topics that's coming from Coach Abby's book. So Coach Abby is not only a licensed mental health therapist and a relationship coach, but she is also an author. How much more can you add to your plate, Coach Abby? But if you're interested in purchasing her book, make sure you go to that description box because right there next to that dollar sign is actually where you can purchase her book at. And if you're interested in just going a little bit deeper with Coach Abby offline, you can definitely reach out to her because her contact information is listed in the description box. So, ladies, thank you so much for being here on this show. And viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. Hi, Coach Abby. Hi, Natasha.
Hi,
Hello.
good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. So now, Natasha, can you tell the viewers just a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Maryland. I have known Coach Abby for, I don't know, going on maybe probably 10 years now. And so I can attest to how great she is in her just purpose in leading women down the path that they are trying to get to and overcoming obstacles. And so we agree that, overcoming obstacles and getting where you need to in life is important. And so that's what I do in my practice. I help women usually between the ages of 16 and 50 and dealing with life transition, anxiety, depression,
Mhm.
things of that sort. And so thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Now, I know that you mentioned that you're right there in Maryland. Shout out to Maryland. Now, are you able to um, offer your service to people nationwide?
Not as a therapist, as I'm licensed by the state of Maryland, like a doctor, I'm only able to practice in the state in which I'm licensed.
Okay. All right.
So,
Okay.
unfortunately for Marylanders, right? But
Yeah.
if you are interested in services and are not in the state of Maryland, I'm sure we can get you some resources before the show is over.
Definitely. So now make sure that you reach out to us if you are not in the state of Maryland, and we will, like Natasha said, get those resources to you. Now, what about you, Coach Abby? They hear you bi-weekly, but we might have new people as well. So can you introduce yourself to our newbies?
Yeah, hi everybody. Good evening. So happy to be here and excited to discuss this topic tonight. I am Coach Abby. I am a Christian relationship therapist and coach, and I am the CEO of Worthy of Love Counseling and Coaching Services.
Definitely. So now, one of the things that I think is so cool about this show is not only will they be able to ask these questions, but we talk about important topics as well. So I know one of the big questions that's just hanging over everybody's head is and I think this is a great question that Coach Abby is about to ask, but I think it definitely needs to be discussed up front so we won't have any type of confusion. So go ahead, Coach Abby.
All right. So, Natasha, being a licensed therapist, how would you define mental health?
Thank you. I am so glad that we are talking about mental health, right? Because there's such a big stigma about it. We don't talk about this when it comes to physical health or spiritual health. But I just want to clarify what we're talking about tonight so everybody can be on the same page. And I use in my practice, and I really, really love the definition that the World Health Organization uses. So I'm just going to read it because I may not get it verbatim. But they define mental health as a state of well being in which an individual can realize his or her abilities, cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and make a contribution to his or her community. That's mental health. That mental health is different than mental health disorder, right?
Mm,
And so I want to clarify that because we all have mental health. We all have a mental health that may be on a scale that's high or low, depending on the day. We don't all have a mental health disorder.
Mhm.
Perfect.
I think that that's excellent,
Hmm.
because when I first posted this question on Facebook, some people, and I don't want to just say some people, because this also includes me, you know, um, they said that they wouldn't date somebody. And before hearing your topic, I put on here, they said that they would not date somebody with a mental illness. So, can someone's mental illness be controlled, or is it more appropriate to call it a mental health disorder? You can answer that one. And then, when you say that, um, what would you say to somebody like myself who would say they would never date somebody, with a mental illness? And we'll start with you, Natasha.
Yeah, I think we have probably already dated somebody with a mental health, illness. And there's probably stages in our life that we have struggled with mental health and not even known. And
Mhm.
so to say that I'm going to make a broad statement that I'm never going to date anybody with the illness is kind of hard to put out there, especially in the seasons of marriage, right? I've noticed even as a newlywed, there's things that my husband will do that will trigger me, right? That will cause something that I didn't even think about to come up, right? Or rub me the wrong way, right? Will bring up anxiety in me. And so there's different stages of life that people go through life losses, chaos, like what we've gone through with the pandemic. Like, I can't imagine us not having anxiety, police brutality, racism. At some point in your life, you're not gonna be 100% in tune, right? It's the same way with our physical health. You may wake up one day feeling off, have a cold. Why is it okay to have a cold, but not okay one day to be experiencing anxiety?
Hmm.
That's good. That's good. What about you, Coach Abby? Same question. What would you say to somebody, that's like me and say, you know what, I would never date somebody with a mental illness.
Yeah, I agree with exactly what Tasha said. We all go through different seasons and life transitions in our lives where there's going to be times where we're not able to always cope with life stressors, or we're not always able to deal with triggers. So does that mean you're going to be hard on yourself, because you're dealing with things that you may not feel like you can handle at the moment. So I think it's important to kind of be more clear around what that means versus like a broad topic. Oh, I'm not going to date anybody with a mental health illness. Like, what does that mean and what does that look like? And I know we'll discuss that further in the show.
Hmm. Well, I mean, for me, I look at mental illness as, you know, somebody that is not in control, somebody that um I like a consistent person. And I would tell you guys and the viewers first, I am very ignorant to this because I've never had to consistently, I'm thinking about what Natasha said. I probably had to be around somebody who had a mental health disorder, but maybe I just didn't know. Maybe I was just like, that's somebody that I don't want to hang around. But, with that, I just thought about somebody that is out of control and I never know what their next action towards me would be. And so I really like those people with like you can have a high personality, but I just need to know what I'm expecting or getting from that person on a consistent basis. And so when I think of mental health disorder, I think of a person that I just don't know what I'm going to get from one day to the next. So help me with that.
Yeah, I think there are mental health disorders where you can get a person who's inconsistent, who, you never know what you're going to get. But I think it's important to realize that mental health is a spectrum, right? You
Okay.
may have somebody over here who is hearing voices, who's dealing with depression, who's maybe feeling suicidal. And then you may have somebody on the scale here who's just feeling off and can't shake it and can't figure out why they're feeling off today. You know, it's a spectrum rather than to put everybody in the category.
Mhm.
And I would also venture to say the people in here who are struggling a little more, like we shouldn't count them out,
That's
right?
good.
Because, you know, just because somebody has a mental illness doesn't mean they're not well. You know, through the proper resources, medication, support, this person can probably be a better dating partner than this person over here who hasn't gotten the resources they need.
Mm.
So, you know, if anybody who's listening and it considers themselves struggling a little more, I want to make sure that we don't stigmatize them or make them feel any type of way, because the reality is that they're dateable as well, you know.
So happy you said that because when I was writing the questions, I was like, well, they need love too, you know? So I'm just happy that you said that. I'm happy because May is mental health like
Hmm.
awareness month.
Awareness. Hmm.
And so I'm just happy you said that because like you said, we don't know who is tuning in and we don't know where they're at. So I don't want anybody to ever feel hopeless like, well, because I struggle with this or because I have this, then I'm not lovable. So shout out to Natasha for throwing that out there. But Coach
Awesome.
Abby, why did you feel that it was important to address this topic?
Yeah, just like we mentioned that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and like Natasha's been saying, there has been a stigma around mental health, and I think it's important to really have an open and honest conversation about what mental health looks like and the different range and spectrums of mental health. Like you said, mental health can look like suicidal ideations, hallucinations, um, severe depression, bipolar versus I just had a baby and I don't know how to cope with this new child. So it's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's all types of different ways where mental health can show up in somebody's life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's important just to talk about and not stigmatize people that may be, you know, going through different situations or transitions, you know, or have a chemical imbalance where they may not be able to control their mental health without the proper medications or resources that's available.
Okay, okay. And shout out to Chantel Woods. And we do have some other people that's tuning in. Make sure you guys go ahead and share this video now so that more people will know about Coach Abby as well as Natasha and this important topic that we are talking about today. How important is discussing mental health in your relationship as well. So now I do have a question for, and it's coming to both of you guys, Coach Abby and Natasha. I don't know what other guys would be. I would be asking the question too. I thought of it. You know how you say something, then you think about it later. Like, who are you talking to, Marceline? But Coach Abby, both of you guys are married, and this is a question that I thought about when Chantel posted a response to something to the same um, discussion question, and so it is great to have this conversation now in the dating phase. But what about, like you were talking about, Coach Abby, how you say different situations may change, like the mental health of somebody? We're having this, I'm dating a guy and I'm having this discussion with him now. But what if something changes a year later, 2 years later, we're already married, and he does have this situation that causes a mental health disorder? How how should a person handle that? And we'll ask you as a married woman, Coach Abby, and a therapist.
Okay. So how a person should handle that is really paying attention to maybe the triggers that might have caused, you know, the mental health breakdown or whatever transition that might have happened. Just for example, that spouse might have lost their job and they've been having a hard time dealing with it. They may fall into some type of severe depression. Let's say it's the husband and he's used to being the provider. And so now he has to deal with this new life transition where, man, I came from, we were dating, we were good, we were married, and I had this job. This job was a part of my identity, and all of a sudden I'm being stripped away from this. Now I can't provide for my family. I don't know who I am as a man. And it would be understandable that this person could go into some sort of depression. So I would say to that person, look at the timeline. Um, or ask them, how should I support you? So do you need to be by yourself? Do you need a break? How can I support you? Ask them that. And if you're still supporting them and they're not coming out of, if it's been like 2 weeks or more, because usually that's when we, diagnose with someone that has some sort of depression. If it's longer than 2 weeks, then that's when you start to seek professional help.
Okay, so as the spouse, I need to be looking for. I'm already seeing his. Am I looking just for personality changes? Maybe
more behavioral changes.
Okay.
Like, if they're not getting out of bed, if they're not eating, if they're not taking care of their personal hygiene, if they're starting to cut off you, if they're starting to cut off family and friends, those are examples, those those behavior changes.
Okay, so I'm noticing that, and then it's lasting. Am I talking to? I'm in my 2 weeks. I'm still asking him questions like, I'm noticing some changes within you. Am I starting to have conversations like that with my husband? We talking about our husband, y'all. we don't move past dating.
Yeah, whenever you start to see that they're not being their usual selves, you should definitely start to ask a question. If you're noticing that something is off, because your husband, the routine, and if you're starting to see that something's off right away, that's when that communication needs to happen ASAP. Or even if the example losing the job, that communication should be, how can I support you? How can we go through this together? That communication needs to happen now. And then pay attention to how he responds to those, to that situation or to that support. Is it working? Maybe your support is not, good enough. Not saying it's not good enough, but it's not enough for him to be able to move forward. And that's when you'll, reach out for professional help or talk about professional services.
But what if he's just like, and when I say he, this can also go for the wife noticing change within his
right.
A husband noticing changes within his wife. But if I ask him, I'm noticing some changes, and then he'll just, what if he just say, well, I'm okay, I feel fine, I'm just tired, I just want to stay in bed longer.
Still look at those behaviors and still call him out on those behaviors. You want to call the person out on those behaviors. You may be fine, but I'm noticing you've been getting up later, or you've been haven't taken a shower in a couple of days, or you've been on your video games all day, not even trying to look for work. Call them out on those behaviors and say, well, this is what I'm seeing.
Okay. So now what about you, Natasha? What is your thought about that?
I think you have to remember those marriage vows, right? And sickness and health, right? And to realize that if your partner is struggling with mental health, that becomes part of that sickness and health. And I think you have to approach it just like you would approach anything else, right? A couple of hours ago, my husband said, hey, when's the next time you're getting in the gym this week, right? Like, he's reminding me that I need to take care of my physical body. And so just like, we're checking in about those things, we need to check in about mental health. These things don't happen overnight. And I think, to say that your partner is going to be responsive to everything you bring up is not the reality of marriage, right? Like, you may start to see your partner gaining weight and you say that it's not attractive to you and they're not ready to work out. And so, you can continue to bring things up, you can enlist supports, but I want to be real about marriage, like that's still your partner's choice, right? And so there's some things that you may have to pray about. There's some things where you may have to pull in his support or her support,
Mm.
and recognize the signs. But those are the conversations that you have before dating, right? When you slip, when you fall, can I bring it up? Can I approach you and say, hey, you ate fast food 3 times this week, or hey, you're not getting adequate sleep? Is this the type of relationship that you're creating before you walk down the aisle?
Oh, so you're telling us it's okay to ask those questions, like situational questions.
I believe so. I
But
believe
don't you
so.
feel like people are just gonna give that great answer every time? Like, oh yeah, it's okay if you ask me.
But I think, in the dating process, it's an interview, right? And so as you're asking questions and how that person responds will let you know how communication goes, right? You bring up something about mental health and they get quiet, right? Or you bring up something about physical fitness and they stand you up for your date at the gym. You're going to see things through behavior that people can't hide. They may speak one thing, but behavior is always going to tell you something different.
Mhm.
Most people don't date long enough to recognize patterns of behavior, or they move too
Mm.
fast.
Tell us, how long should we date? Let me write this down. You see, I got my pen and pen. How long should I be dating a brother?
I don't know if there's a magical number
Give
of
us this magical
days.
number, therapist, counselor.
But I think, recognizing dating is an assessment stage, right? Everything gets an assessment, but dating. Like you're at a job for 90 days, you're on probation. They're assessing whether you're a match. Like they're not fooling around. They're looking at you. Are you arriving on time? Are you doing the task? Are you doing what you said you would do?
Mhm.
But we don't do that in dating. Like, oh, he didn't mean it, or
Mhm.
I'm gonna let it slide. We just don't do that assessment like we should, and then wonder why we're in the situations we are, right? Like, oh, he changed. No, he didn't change. You didn't really listen to what was going on or pay attention to behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just really have to be mindful. And I think if you can go into dating, if you can go into those conversations and say, wow, this is uncomfortable, but it feels good. Like, my husband jokes with me because, like, I can, as at this age and as a therapist, I can talk about anything and I'm not uncomfortable, and he's like, can we not talk about this? But just, I've heard just about everything. So nothing makes me uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But I think that's how you know that you're with the right person, that you can talk about stuff and it doesn't feel weird. It doesn't feel cold. That can let you know if I need to bring up something hard, a couple years down the line, you're not going to get defensive or you're not going to say, no, you're wrong.
Mhm.
Um,
It's
you
that
got to,
level of vulnerability.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
vulnerability and accountability.
Right, right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Tasha, are there specific behaviors or actions or thoughts that someone should be aware of to know if they are suffering from a mental health disorder?
Yeah, you said earlier, look at the change in the behavior. So, any change in behavior, any change in thoughts, any change in mood, any change in the way you feel is going to let you know that something's going on with mental health. It's so funny. Like, we'll wake up and we'll be like, oh, my shoulder hurts. Like, I need to go to the doctor, right? But we don't do the same thing when we feel off mentally, right? We just keep moving. I
Mm-hmm.
really wish that there was that type of feedback when it came to mental health. Like, oh, I don't feel right. Like, let me go see my therapist, right? I just wish it were common. We get an annual physical, but we don't get an annual check on our mental health, and so if you're feeling off physically, do the same things that you would do if you were feeling off mentally. Pay attention to it because it
Mm-hmm.
only does get worse if you don't address it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So shout out to Evelyn as well as Daryl who's tuning in to the show. Now, Chantel, I saw that you posted a question, but with Facebook, those messages be going so fast. Can you post your question again so I can ask um, Coach Abby and Tasha. Evelyn asked the question. We'll start with you, Coach Abby. Why do you believe the stigma against mental health is so strong?
I believe because mental health has been labeled as you're crazy
Mm-hmm.
or you can't take care of yourself, you need to go talk to a shrink, or you can't take care of your own problems,
Mm-hmm.
without somebody's, assistance or help. So again, it's that level of I'm this strong, independent person. I don't need nobody in my business. I don't need nobody to tell me how to manage my life. I don't need nobody telling me that something's wrong. I can do this on my own. And so I think that level of, independence, that level of a me type of, attitude, like me, I can do this by myself, has led to that stigma of, mental health is just like you're crazy. You don't, if you need somebody to tell you how to manage your day or how to breathe or how to, whatever, then something is wrong with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about you, Natasha? Same question.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of stigma just in the Black community. And I think there's two things with us. One is just the distrust of the white establishment, right? Just through different history events. Like we have just come to really question, like if somebody wants to diagnose me or give me this medicine or tell me I'm this or that. And some of it is valid. I completely agree with that. And most of the profession has historically been dominated by white men. Like if you look at the books, when you're becoming a counselor, most of these theories that they're teaching us are, you see these old white men. And so I'm so glad, in the present day, we have people who look like us who are therapists and counselors and psychiatrists. And then the second issue that I believe is the church, believe it or not, right? There's so much stigma just related to you don't need therapy, you just need Jesus, right? Or just
Mm-hmm. That's
pray,
right.
or and that doesn't work all the time. And if we had more time, I would love to talk about how mental illness is prevalent in the Bible. But David, like he would probably be my best client. Like I'd probably get rich treating him
Uh-huh.
because the Psalms are just full of him being depressed and suicidal. And
Mm-hmm.
then one minute he's happy, and so we have to get over these, like this sense of, bondage around what other people are saying about us and get the help we need for ourselves.
That's good. That's good you called it bondage because that is so true. So now, Chantel, this is Chantel's question. She said, regarding what partners should look out for, and this question's coming to you first, Natasha. Regarding what partners should look out for, don't people do what they know slash think to do in that moment?
Yeah, you're going to date, a representative in the beginning. You just are. But I think, over time, consistency, right? Consistency is going to show you somebody's character. And so, even when I get couples who are on the brink of divorce or who are experiencing conflict, most of the time when they're telling me a story, some of this behavior started way back when they were dating. You know, it it usually doesn't come out the blue.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
so
go ahead.
I've even noticed, when I was dating and not really dealing with my own pain, that there were certain things going on with me that caused me to not look at these red flags because I was dealing with my own issues, and so that causes a blinder, right? If I'm dealing with low self-esteem, I'm not going to recognize when he's disrespected me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm already disrespecting myself or not thinking highly of myself.
Yeah.
And so it's twofold. Like, what are we not looking at? But also, are we giving time to heal and really make sure that we're healthy enough to read the person that's in front of us?
Mm-hmm. That's
And I'm
good.
not saying that you're not, Chantel. I'm just saying that it's twofold, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to also mention why she asked this question. So this is what she said. And if you need to add anything additionally, Natasha, please do. So her question, well, I'm going to read the question again. It says, regarding what partners should look out for, don't people do what they know slash think to do in that moment? Now, Chantel is married, and she said she's asking this because I had a traumatizing birth experience that led to depression. My husband did what he knew to do in that moment, which is fair. I definitely needed professional help, but at that time, I was too deep in the rut to seek help.
Yeah, I think that's where the education is needed, right? Postpartum depression. It sounds like kind of that's, I don't want to diagnose you, but it sounds like something of that, like that nature, what you were going through. And, we're not taught that that happens to us as Black women sometimes. We're just not.
Mhm.
And, usually there's a strong correlation between postpartum depression and, you know, dealing with depression before the baby gets here. And so, my goal is always to educate. Like, my clients get in the room and they're like, "You look like me." Like, okay, I didn't realize, and they get excited, right? That I get it. And so I think we just have to keep educating and educating and educating our community, because there are going to be things that you guys miss. And, I'm glad that you're in a healthier place now. And I'm sorry that happened. But I think also, there's grace when we're ignorant, right? And so I'm glad that you guys were able to overcome that.
Yeah, and she said it definitely was postpartum depression. Anything to add, Coach Abby, to that?
No, I was just going to tell Chantel to give herself grace in that moment, and not to beat herself up for, experiencing postpartum depression. Like Tasha says, definitely a lack of education around that, and it's not really, taught frequently. But it's good that she did have a supportive husband, that was there, by her and didn't, leave her. And he was there to do the best that he could do. So that speaks volume there.
But I guess my question to that would be, because it does sound like Chantel is more so also saying, like, because she didn't know like that this could happen or anything like that, how would you? I'm just thinking like, okay, because we don't know about certain things, how would, is there any way that we can prepare ourselves for something, or should we still go back to what you said, Coach Abby? If we start seeing behavioral changes within ourselves, then like if it ain't nothing physical that we would need to see a doctor for, then we should automatically maybe seek out a therapist so they can help us determine what is going on.
I think it's both. Sorry, Chantel, I'm gonna use you for example in other pregnant women. I think it's both. Now that we know more about postpartum depression, make sure you educate yourself and make sure you ask your doctor at those appointments. Ask the doctor, what does this look like? How should I prepare for this? Do your own research. And even after you have the baby, you have follow-up appointments, and really be honest with it. Because I think you do have a 2-week checkup after the baby where they are asking specific questions around postpartum. How are you feeling? How are you able to cope? And making sure that you're honest with yourself to say, okay, I'm not doing well. Sometimes we try to fight it off and
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, it's nothing wrong. I can do it, because you feel guilty. Like, why am I feeling depressed about having this baby?
Yeah.
Or where I'm supposed to be loving my baby, but her cries or his cries, they not sleeping. What's going on? Like that newborn stage is stressful. So it's completely understandable. And we have to give ourselves grace and say, okay, I need to help, and not try to hide it and thinking that we can just do it on our own.
Well, one thing I was thinking about, like not only with the postpartum depression with that,
Mm-hmm.
but like what Natasha was saying, that assessment that we would be doing for that person that we're dating, But I'm thinking about that self-assessment for myself, and I had to be asking myself like, Martinique, why don't you want to get up and take a shower anymore? Why don't you want the blinds open anymore? So I first need to be recognizing what changes are going on within me, and then had that boldness to seek you guys out, you know, as well. So Evelyn asked the question, and this is coming to you, Natasha. She said, what would you say to people who believe those who say, I'm going to kill myself, are, I think she's asking, are they only attention seeking?
Um, well, I take suicidal behavior seriously, and you have to. You just do. There it may be some attention seeking behavior, but also, somebody's going to get annoyed if you call 911 and they got to go to the hospital. You don't get a choice. If you're suicidal, they take you whether you want to go or not. And so that attention seeking behavior is going to stop real quick if they're not
Mm.
serious. But you just never want to play with that. You want to call 911, get the person to the nearest emergency room.
So you saying we need to defeat that with like not saying calling them to do it, but seek that professional help to help that
Absolutely.
person.
Absolutely, because also if there's something else going on and somebody's, manipulating you or doing attention
Mm.
seeking behavior, that may be another mental health issue, right?
Okay.
That's more serious, that needs more attention. And so that's not something that you should play with or just be in that circle of going back and forth. That sounds very exhausting.
Oh, okay, okay. So Evelyn said she is asking what to say to skeptics who say that those people that want to commit suicide are only attention seekers.
Got it. Well, I try not to argue with people.
I
Like
know
there's this
that's right.
thing
Who
like
had time for that?
don't read the comments, right? Like just don't. You don't want to give your pearls to swine. Like you don't want to spend that time and that energy arguing with somebody who's not really receptive. And so you can educate once or twice and then kind of keep it moving.
Yeah. I would think that would be difficult for you guys as a counselor and a therapist, like not to dig in deep into these comments. Like, what are you talking about? That don't even make sense. I be saying that, and I'm not a therapist or counselor. I just have wisdom. But go ahead, Coach Abby.
So, Tasha, where should someone start looking to receive help?
Yeah, it's actually easier than you think. Like if you have health insurance, you probably can get therapy for as little as $15 a session.
Wow.
And most insurance plans cover it. And during COVID, most insurance plans were even covering the copay because they realized that people were falling into, mental health issues during the pandemic. And so I had so many people who were getting free therapy through the whole COVID pandemic, and
Mm,
those copays are starting again. But I mean, it's cheaper than you realize. So
mhm,
that's one avenue. The second avenue is most jobs have an EAP, an employee assistance program. You can ask your HR department about it, but they give you up to 3, sometimes even 6 sessions for free.
mhm,
And so those are free resources. If you're looking for, a therapist who looks like you, who is minority, there's therapy for Black girls. There's also therapy for Black men. There's Psychology Today that has a therapist directory where you can look at their faces and you can find somebody who looks familiar. um, it's easier than you think, right? In this day and age, it just may be finding somebody who has an opening right now that
mhm,
works with your schedule. But, there's so many ways to get therapy that's affordable.
mhm.
Hmm.
So now, Coach Abby, are there signs that we can actually look for that warn us that someone is struggling with a serious mental health disorder before we get too invested in a relationship.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of those behaviors are like we talked about, that consistency over time and the severity of it. Like I know we haven't talked about this, but emotional abuse. So like if someone, it gets really angry and hot, quick tempered all the time and really trying to control the situation, those are some signs you may not, you shouldn't ignore. um that verbal abuse, of course, that physical abuse. So there's things that you need to pay attention to over time if the person consistently displays these types of things and are not, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. Those are some signs where you're like, okay, this is not going, to work.
Hmm.
But like Tasha said, I think Tasha, you mentioned this, you really have to be at a clear space to really recognize those situations. So if you're dealing with your own low self-esteem, your own, mental health that you haven't addressed, then it's going to be harder to look for those signs. So when you are out there dating, just make sure that you have a clear mind and that you're at that point where you're able to really pay attention to somebody's patterns and behaviors.
Well, I feel like with that statement though, um, I might have, and this is strictly an example, y'all. I might have a dirty house, but I don't want to date somebody else with a dirty house. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I know what I accept, but I know what I won't accept. So I might have low self esteem, but I refuse for you to be talking about me every day. So like with you saying that though, I can still bring it up to somebody's attention, that I'm still noticing some things about you, even though I'm struggling with something, the same thing that you are dealing with.
Yeah, most of the times I've seen that people that suffer through like really severe low self-esteem may not be able to recognize some of those things.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where their confidence is just really low. They're just willing to accept anything and everything is like the example that I was using versus, I may not be happy about this or this about myself, but you still have a clear mind as far as what you will and will not accept.
Right.
That makes
And
sense.
back to your dirty house example, Martinique, like most people who are struggling with the same thing that their partner is struggling with, you guys are just going to stay with two dirty houses, right?
Okay.
Nobody's going to change. And so, if your house were clean, you may be able to help him clean his, encourage him, provide an example. But, most people who are struggling with the same thing, it's hard to encourage each other to move forward.
Hmm. Now you just brought up something, Natasha, because I feel that we do see somebody who may have, a mental health disorder, and we're like, oh, I can help them. I have no professional experience to help somebody dealing with that. But I'm like, oh, I can help them. Talk to us about that.
That's hard. That's really hard.
Help us, Natasha.
I think also, just as women, sometimes we take on this fix it caretaker, I'm going to fix him role, or, I can't find anybody else. So there's only two things that I don't like about him. So I'm going to keep him.
Hmm.
Um, but how a relationship starts is how it's going to end. So
Okay.
if you want a lifetime of being a caretaker, that's what you're going to do,
Hmm.
and so just be careful around starting that standard now, because it's not going to change 10 years from now.
Hmm. That's good. That's good.
Hmm. So, Tasha, what would you say to a family member that is struggling to get their loved one help for their mental health?
Yeah, I would say stay encouraged. It's hard. I have family members who are struggling with mental health, so I know that personally. And I'm a
Mhm.
therapist. They don't listen to me, so, and it takes time. Sometimes it takes God having to really take them to their rock bottom, unfortunately, and we pray that that's not something that's, fatal or will hurt them. But I think also strong interventions, assertive behavior, not enabling the person, not putting up with, being a doormat to certain behaviors. You have a right to vocalize your needs and to demand that they get met. But I think also getting support for yourself, right? If that person doesn't want to go to therapy, you can go to therapy just to get support dealing with them, and that's completely fine. And through the support of that therapist, you may decide to make a decision, that helps break some codependence or get you in a spot where you feel better, dealing with whatever behavior you're experiencing. Don't go through it alone. National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, they usually have a chapter in each city. And so they have support groups for family members. They have support groups for people who are going through mental health issues, and they hold meetings in churches. I think they're doing them on Zoom now, but they're free, completely free. And so that would be a resource as well.
Mm-hmm. So now, Coach Abby, Regina asked the question: can you give examples of how to I'm so horrible with that word. How to nicely suggest to someone to see a mental health professional?
Yeah, so out of love, definitely you want to speak from a place of love. You want to speak from a place of empathy and a place from concern and care, and just, really say, hey, I've seen some changes in your behaviors, and I really want to make sure that you are okay. And how, just to make sure that you are okay, would you be willing to maybe see a therapist? We can either go together, we can look at some therapists, together, and just really making sure you're, providing that support for that person. Mm-hmm. And not coming off like, oh, something's wrong with you. You doing A, B, and C, D, and you need to go get some help because you just acting crazy. Like, no.
I think that's the hardest part, though, because it seems like it would come out when you're angry with the person anyway. But Natasha, Evelyn asked the question: what is the farthest extreme of illness from which you have seen the biggest improvement?
I've dealt with people who I've had to call 911 in my office because they're about to kill themselves. So, I mean, I think I've seen about everything, right? But I think also, I gotta have the mentality and see hope in everybody. There's no way I should be anybody's therapist if I already come in the room feeling like there's no hope. There's no hope for you. You should fire me, because you need hope. You need to know that you're going to improve, that you're going to get to a certain stage that you feel that life can be more manageable. With some mental illnesses, it's harder than others, right? And I've seen people go up and down, up and down. But just related to my faith and just my personal belongings, I believe that there's hope for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now, Coach Abby, you are my relationship coach, and I'm really, I saw, this is a plug for our next topic. We're going to talk about should you online date. That's June 7th, you guys, at 9 p.m. But I'm really attracted to this guy, online, and I'm telling you, I like Africans. I don't discriminate, Tasha, but I like Africans. We got the same mindset. But I think he's a cute guy. How early should I start talking to him about his mental health? Can it be my first date conversation? Like I'm doing a Zoom, I'm about to do a Zoom with him. Should it be my first Zoom discussion, or should it be like months later? What you think?
I don't know about, well, if it comes up on the first date.
Girl, it don't come up. It do not be talking about.
And I was going to say, it doesn't have to be termed as mental health, is what I was going to say. It could just be that, they can ask, well, how you can ask, well, how was your day today? Oh, it was fine. It was fine. Or, I really had a bad day. My boss was doing this and that. You could just simply ask, well, oh, how did you deal with that? It could be just simply as that. It doesn't have to be, you use it. Well, how do you deal with your mental health? Or do you have mental health disorders running to your family? It could just be that simple, open conversation just to see how somebody may deal with day-to-day stressors, or how they may just deal with daily situations or daily, triggers. Oh, my coworker was making me angry. And oh, so really, what did you do? How did you, deal with that?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. But we are so afraid, I think, to ask those follow-up questions. Like, well, how did you deal with that? And then he like, what are you, FBI? I'm like, pretty much. Coach Abby told me to ask you. But Tasha, Coach Abby mentioned you don't really have to go into, okay, well, does your family struggle with mental illness? Is that a question that we should maybe eventually talk about?
I think if it gets to the point where you're seriously thinking about a partnership, absolutely.
Yeah.
In the dating where you're just, date 3, you're not sure whether this person is going to be your life partner. You may not need to know the whole family history at date 3. But I think, in terms of if we're moving towards walking down the aisle, I need to know family history. And it's important just because, you need to know what's going to happen where, indirectly your wife or your husband may be pulled in a direction where they're helping to support a family member or they're helping you through a dark time. You don't want those things to come up and surprise them. And believe it or not, like it's more common than you think. Anxiety and depression, they are the top mental illnesses right now. And, you can score very, very low on an anxiety scale, and that would be classified as a mental health issue, right? But most people, they find that like just in the state of the world right now are suffering with anxiety and depression. Just, and being a Black person in America, like we just have higher stress levels, right? We just do. The research shows it. And so, it's common, right? I suffer with depression. And so it's just common and we have to normalize it. But I think in terms of your question about, also dating, bringing up pop culture, seeing how that person responds, just bringing up figures, like sort of like saying, hey, have you heard that J. Cole album? What you think about that? Like he was talking about his mental health, how they respond to pop culture and what's going on with other people may say, actually, they gave an intelligent, reasonable response. Now let's make it personal. If they say, nah, he crazy, move on, right? And so that can let you know where to go. Just bringing up generic things that we're all exposed to in the media. Prince Harry and Meghan are big pop topics like on mental health right now. Bringing that up. How does the person that you're dating feel about that? Do they even know about it? Is it an interest to them? If they're not even aware of that and you're struggling with mental health, that kind of may let you know that this isn't even something they think about. Yeah.
That's good, Tasha. So, Tasha, how can the church community begin to have open conversations about mental health and the importance of seeking professional help?
Oh gosh, we have a way to go with the church. I would just say, I went to seminary for my degree, my grad school. So I try to incorporate spirituality and psychology at the same time. So I believe that our brains are fallen just like the world. And so if you take that mentality, of course there would be mental health stuff because our bodies are deteriorating, every part of them, including our brain. And so why wouldn't there be stuff going on with our brains? Just like there's disease and cancer and diabetes.
Mhm.
How come illness can affect everything below the neck
But our
but not
mind.
above? That makes no sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think of it from that standpoint, hopefully it normalizes it a bit and you can come to see it from a spiritual perspective as well.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I think the crazy thing is I just never thought about it like that. Like I mean, our bodies. I guess we just don't think of. We know our brain is a part of our body, but we just don't think that it. I don't know the correct terminology for it, but we don't think that sometimes it breaks.
Yeah.
We need help with it. But I'm really glad that you guys are really just having helping us to have a better understanding about um, just how we should approach this and really just being more sympathetic when we're having conversations with individuals as well. I think one of the cool things that you said, Natasha, was like you probably have dealt with or been with somebody that dealt with a mental health. Maybe they've been dealing with you and you've been having that mental health disorder. But one of the questions that Doc Sierra, well, at one of the questions that Evelyn asked was, how do we deal with, you know, how would you consider bottling things in? Would you consider bottling things in as a mental illness or just bad habits in regard to your mental wellness? And we'll start with you, Coach Abby.
Yeah, that can be a bad habit for your mental wellness that can eventually lead to a mental health disorder. So, for example, um, I'm just going to go back to the postpartum. If you're bottling that up and not seeking, that help, that could lead to, a postpartum depression diagnosis, and you could explode and it could continue to, get worse. So you definitely want to make sure that you know, if I want to encourage you to talk about it instead of bottling those things up because it's not good for your mental wellness.
Okay. Now, Doc Sierra asked the question, Natasha. She said that, how do you deal with grief? Grief. My relationship ended when my ex went into a dark place when his dad died. How do you personally deal with it?
Yeah, grief is hard because, there's this mentality that once the funeral happens, once you bury someone, you should be over it. And the normal grieving process is 2 to 7 years. And
Wow.
so, to recognize that it is normal to grieve for 2 to 7 years. And there's stages to grief, which we don't have time for tonight, but grief is something that's not a necessarily mental illness, but you can still go to a therapist to talk about.
Mhm.
You don't have to just go to therapy because,
Mhm.
there's something major, right? You can go to process anything that's going on, but there's grief therapists who specialize in grief. I would encourage your partner or even you to seek one out.
So now, do you think that, okay, that's a situation that has caused this person to, grieve, and they have changed, I guess I don't know Doc Sierra, but maybe their personality changed, maybe their day-to-day the things that they did on a daily basis changed. But Natasha, do you feel that if we are experiencing this changed person and they maybe they don't want to go to therapy or anything like that, do we now have to put it amongst ourselves and say, okay, well, Martinique, do you feel that you can continue on with this person being in the state of this mindset that this person is now? Do you think we have to start asking ourselves that question if this person isn't doing anything to maybe go back into how he used to be?
Yeah, you have to ask yourself what are deal breakers, but I also believe, within the marriage relationship, if you're making vows with somebody, there may be some things that are long suffering, right? And that really doesn't sound good to say, but there's some things that you're going to pray about, hope change. Like I have those things, right? That like and if my husband's listening, sorry, but like I have those things where I'm like, I hope God changes in him. And I'm sure he has them about me too,
Real.
and so it's not just am I going to be done? It's if something happens within our marriage or we get that frustrated, what are going to be our resources to manage that? And dating, it's
Mm,
different. You can go, but
okay.
within marriage, that's hard, you know?
I think
I
that would
was
be so hard though. I done dated you all this time and then, things change. We
Yeah.
gonna make it work, brother. I'm just letting you know whoever out there, and if you watching this show, my future husband, we gonna make this work if I like it. But Coach Abby, you was about to say something.
Yeah, I was going to agree with Tasha. With marriage is a lot different because you did make that commitment for better, for worse, or sickness through and health. And with dating, it's difficult because you have put in so much time and energy with this person, and it's unfortunate that during such a tragic event that they weren't able to receive your support. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't
Mm,
find that you were that important to be brought in during this grief period. And that says a lot,
mm-hmm.
so it kind of shows you like, wow, like I've spent this much time and energy with you. You know who I am. I met your father. I met your family. They became a part of my family. But when this tragic situation happened, you just shut me out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that says a lot. Well, what else are you going to shut me out on if we were to get married?
Yeah,
This would, so you have to really, pay attention to that.
that's good. That's good. So now, Regina, we did talk about, like the difference between mental illness and mental health as well. But Coach Abby, can you tell us how did your book address this topic?
So let me see, I don't address mental health like specific in the book, but I do, encourage people just being myself as a mental health therapist, just to, seek help if they are, struggling with things that they may not be able to cope with on their own.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I definitely again appreciate you, Coach Abby, for wanting to discuss this topic because if I would have been writing all the topics, then it wasn't gonna be nothing about no mental illness because I do not be talking about this. But I just love how the advice that you two have given us is very practical, and it is very consistent with being mindful of that individual and not only thinking about that individual but also think about yourself and start assessing yourself to see if there is some behavioral changes within yourself as well. Viewers, I definitely appreciate you guys for your great questions and your comments. Make sure that you continue to share this video now so that more people will know about how to talk to somebody that you're considering dating, about their mental health as well as your mental health. And if you're interested in any of Coach Abby's services, make sure you go to that description box and you can reach out to her. If you're interested in her book, make sure you click on that link right there next to the dollar sign and you can actually read the book summary as well. We definitely hope that you all have a great remainder of the night. And don't forget to put on your calendar June 7th at 9 p.m. We are going to be talking about should you online date. Now, me personally, I have no problem with online dating. But, we would love to hear your feedback about that. You can put in the comment field, would you date online, or would you not? Is that not for you? But like I said, I definitely appreciate you for tuning in to another episode of Heart Talk with Coach Abby. And we thank you again, Natasha, for your services and being on the show and telling us more about how we can really just begin to take care of ourselves. We hope you guys have a great remainder of the night, and we will talk to you all later. Bye bye.